If you want to learn more about home brewing, then you need to check out beerloons.com. You'll find all of your brewing questions answered and more. Hi everyone, I am your host Mike Campbell and welcome to Brewing Today. It is a new year, and I know your New Year's resolution was to brew more beer, and that is what we are here to help you with. Brewing Today is a show dedicated to helping people make the best beer possible through teaching you about brewing techniques, brewing styles, and the history of beer. Each week we focus on a specific topic for a short 10-minute or less show. Sit back, open a beer, and enjoy the show. On today's show, I am going to discuss yeast pitch rate. This is a topic that is gaining some strength lately, and it is worth diving into with a little detail. I'll tell you what a pitch rate is, why you would worry about your pitch rate, how to adjust your pitch rate, and the benefits of a proper pitch rate. So, let's go ahead and dive right on into it. First off, a pitch rate is simply how much yeast you add to your wort to create fermentation. Basically, how much yeast do you add. You can underpitch and overpitch as well. Now, why would you worry about your pitch rate? Because depending on if you under or overpitch can influence the end flavor of your beer. The issue with underpitching your beer is excess levels of diacetyl, which diacetyl is a very buttery flavor in a beer, increase in higher fusel alcohol formation, increase in ester formation, increase in volatile sulfur compounds, high terminal gravities, stuck fermentations, increased risk of infection. So basically what we're saying is the beer just simply doesn't get enough yeast, so it takes too long for it to really get active with the fermentation that you want to see. Now, underpitching is somewhat difficult to do these days because of the yeast options available, whether it's liquid or dry. So it is possible though, and most of us do some form of underpitching. The Yeast Activator Pack does achieve pretty close to what most homebrewers would want to pitch for an average beer, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit. White Labs, a little bit less, may be worth more doing a yeast starter, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. High pitch rates can lead to very low ester production, very fast fermentation, thin or lacking body or mouthfeel, and autolysis. Yeast flavors due to lysing of cells. So how does the average Joe homebrewer know if they are pitching enough yeast? According to Yeast, which has a ton of information on this topic on their website at yeastlab.com, by the way, really wonderful information. Their activator pack is the proper amount of yeast to add to a standard gravity 5-gallon batch of homebrew. A standard batch has a starting gravity between 1034 to 1060 and is an ale according to them. For lagers or high gravity beers, we need to increase the pitch rate. And how do we increase the pitch rate? Well, by making a yeast starter. White Lab, by the way, has very good information as well. I don't want to leave them out, but I got a lot of my information off the Yeast website for this episode. So a yeast starter is basically a small batch of beer made ahead of time to allow the yeast to multiply and bulk up in volume. A common rule of thumb is for every 1 cup of water, you want to use a half cup of dry malt extract. You want to boil the dry malt extract in water for about 5 minutes to kill bacteria. Some do it longer. I do it about 5 minutes. And then cool the wort to below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, just like you would if you're making a batch of beer. We don't add hops here because we aren't actually making a batch of beer. We're just giving the yeast a food source, or sugar, so it will start to multiply. So great, you now have the wort cooled to below 80 degrees, and don't forget to aerate the wort if you can. Now, simply add your yeast. That's all there is to a yeast starter. I usually use a growler with a stopper and airlock to make my starters, but most homebrew shops carry yeast starter kits containing a scientific flask, a stopper, airlock, and sometimes they have dry malt, or sometimes you have to buy that separate, so just pay attention because you do need malt. A large beer bottle will work as well. Treat the starter just like you would a beer, so sanitize everything that will come in contact with the wort post-boil, and make sure to have a stopper and airlock. There is no reason to ruin your beer before you've even brewed it, because I've heard a lot of folks, because I'm doing a starter, I'm just going to use some saran wrap or tinfoil or something like that. Do it right. Do a stopper and airlock so the yeast is protected and starts to ferment and you don't have any bacteria issues. So some of you might be asking, how far in advance do I want to make my starter? And that is an excellent question. The general thought is about 24 in advance. Me personally, I like to make my yeast starters 48 hours in advance. Why do I add an extra 24 hours to my starters? Because I am a pain in the ass and I like to do things differently. Yeah. No, I noticed that when I added the extra time, the fermentation showed signs of life sooner. The way that I thought about it and pass it on to you is you just place the yeast in front of an all-you-can-eat buffet, and it ate and ate and ate. Now, you drive it 2 blocks down to another all-you-can-eat buffet and want it to eat again. The yeast is full and, frankly, is not looking to eat right now. Plus, the cell is in the middle of multiplying. By adding the extra 24 hours, the yeast has multiplied, digested, and is now ready to hit the buffet again. Plus, you have more yeast, basically. That's my reasoning for doing them 48 hours in advance versus 24. The starter will ferment away just like a beer would. Starters should be kept at room temperature, no matter if you are making an ale or a lager up front. Starters are also very helpful if you think your yeast might be stressed from shipment, if it's old, or if you think it's dead. At least you will know if your yeast is viable before adding it to the entire batch of beer. You wouldn't even brew the batch if you think that the yeast is dead. So if you want to know more specifically about how large a starter to make, go to yeastlab.com, where they do have a pitch rate calculator. It's a little confusing up front, but once you toy with it a little bit, it makes perfect sense, and it's actually a very handy little calculator to use. So if you're doing a higher alcohol beer, a barley wine, for example, the calculator will figure out for you what your pitch rate, how much yeast you're looking for to make your beer. So I really do hope I've answered your questions on this topic, but if I haven't, then email me at mikec@beerloons.com with your questions. I will be happy to explain anything in further detail to you. We do want this to be an active show with you, so don't be shy about emailing us, following us on Facebook and Twitter, and please ask questions. I want this to be an open community where people can ask questions of somebody that will explain the answer and hopefully put it into plain English for you. Because I have brewed for a while, as you can see on all of our information that we have out there, our website, all that fun stuff. And I'm just passing my experience on to you. With all the hundreds of batches I've done, I just want to pass that information on. So if I haven't covered everything here or you're still a bit confused, like I say, don't hesitate to contact me at mikec@beerloons.com. That's going to do it for our show today, and don't forget about our craft beer reviews on the Brew For You show. Now shortened to 5 minutes or less. Thank you for spending time with us this week, and until next time, cheers.